This video is brought to you by WoodSongsByRussell.com, home of woodworking tutorials and handmade gifts created in the heart of Eastern Kentucky. For a limited time, join our mailing list for a special discount off your first purchase. That's WoodSongsByRussell.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the wood shop. Well, it's cold and rainy outside today, and what better day is there to stay inside and build a great woodworking project?
It's our favorite thing to do no matter what kind of weather. Right here we have a piece of thermal poplar or roasted poplar, whatever you want to call it. We picked this up at Baghdad Lumber in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Not a sponsor, but definitely a friend to the woodworker here in Kentucky.
Now our project today would be a great idea for a beginning woodworker, especially somebody who wants to make a little cash on the side. Today we're going to be making a decorative lantern.
This is a pretty simple project. You can make it as basic or as fancy as you'd like. We're going to shoot for somewhere in the middle, so let's go ahead, cut a chunk of this off, and get started. Alright, we've done some calculations and figure that we need about 27 inches linear. So we're going to cut a 27-inch section of this board, and then we'll tell you all the different pieces that we're going to cut once we get to the table saw. Now there'll be several different cuts that make up this lantern, but the first cut and the most important is probably the 27 inches that we're going to cut off this block, because we don't want to run this whole board through the planer. This is roasted poplar, so it's not as cheap as, say, pine, but it is less expensive than walnut, but it's still going to give us that luxury look. So let's go ahead and get a chunk of this cut off.
Now our board's cut and ready to plane. This board is 4/4 rough cut. I'm going to plane it down to 3/4, and it's got just a slight cup in it. I can get it out with some shallow passes before we do the deep cuts. We're going to be using our CRAFTSMAN 12.5-inch 15-amp planer. We get a lot of questions about this, a lot of interest. You can check that out. We'll drop a link below. We did several videos on this, so you can check them out too if you're interested. And as always, when you're planing wood, you want to protect your hearing. Always wear ear protection. We always wear this even though you can't see us while we're doing the planing. We have these on. We'll put a link to these also in the description below if you're interested. Well, I kind of overdone it with the planer just a little bit. I didn't check my thickness till it was too late. I'd already passed up 3/4 and I wound up with 5/8, but that's not enough really to matter. It's not going to hurt anything. Right now, we're going to go ahead and edge joint these. That way we get a good straight cut when we take it over to the miter saw and cut our sections out.
Alright, now that we have our edges good and square, we're going to flush up one end of this board to measure by. We are going to need a couple pieces that are 6.5 inches square, and then we're probably going to cut like a 10-inch section and I think a 4-inch section so that we can cut the rails and stiles for the lantern. So let's go ahead and get that knocked out.
Well, now we're back at the table saw. It's time to cut out our rails and our stiles. The stiles are the corner posts. The rails are what connect them together. Now, since we've got 5/8 inch thick wood, we're going to go ahead and make these square. We'll cut them 5/8 wide as well. Should be able to get all the rails and stiles out of this one piece of wood. There will be 4 stiles and 8 rails. And earlier we said they were going to be 10 inches tall. The corner posts, well, we figured out a way to maximize the usage of our wood here would be to cut them at 9 3/4. Now we're over here at the router table. We've got our base and our top, and they're interchangeable because they're the same size. It don't matter which one goes on the top or bottom. And we have this little piece that goes right on the top. You can see that. Now this is optional what we're getting ready to do. but we are going to put a Roman OG profile around the base, the top, and this little piece as well. Okay, now we've got a Roman OG profile in our top, our base, and our little decorative top cap. Now, when I was cutting these Roman OGs, I did notice I had the speed set too slow on the router at first because it was trying to pull too big of chunks at one time. Searched it up right quick and seen that a higher speed was needed for this. And if you noticed, I kind of eased into the OG. I did not go full plunge all at once. I did little swipes, a little bit at a time. It took 3 or 4 to get it all the way to the bearing. That way you're not trying to tear as much wood out all at one time and risk blowing out your corners. And always remember, safety is your responsibility. When I was cutting this little dude, this is really close to the bit. You have to be very careful with that. So always remember safety first.
All right, these are all the pieces that we're going to need for our lantern. These four right here, these are going to be the rails, so we will have to make some cuts on these in just a minute. But I'm going to hit everything with some sandpaper. We're just going to do it by hand. This is actually very, very easy to sand. We have 500 grit, and that seems to be working out just fine. So we're going to sand everything by hand, and then we're going to make our final cuts and assemble.
Well, now everything's cut, sanded, and we are ready for assembly. And to do that, we're going to be using an 18 gauge brad nailer with 1-inch nails and, as always, some wood glue.
We're going to start with our rails and stiles and construct something that kind of looks like a cube or a cage. So let's go ahead and get these together. I want to give a shout out to our friend Tom T. He gave us a little tip about gluing end grain to make these a little bit stronger. I'm going to put a little glue on here and kind of let that sit for a minute. Let it fill up those pores. That'll give us a tighter bond when we put it together.
One thing you have to remember here, we are going to be having nails that will cross paths, so we're going to have to drive them a little offset from each other. We'll put the first one closer to the bottom side of this, and the next one up here closer to the top side when it goes through the other rail.
right, here is our lantern. We did give this one final sanding just by hand. We had some squeeze out from the glue, and I got a little hasty when we were assembling and actually wiped the glue and it rubbed it into the grain. The great thing about this roasted poplar, it's very easy to sand. It's not difficult at all, and so those glue spots came right out. So the last thing we have to do is just apply some finish to this. We're going to use one of our favorites. It's Watco Danish oil, not a sponsor. We just love it. So here we go. I'm excited to see this grain pop. Look at how dark that is. Oh my word.
We'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our fellow woodworkers.
First up, hello Tom T. Tom T has sent us some of his woodworking projects.
Check out these beautiful jewelry boxes complete with flocking. Whoever received these are blessed indeed.
Tom is a man of many woodworking talents. Look at the detail on this tray. He stays busy in the shop, as evidenced by these trays and cupcake stands. Tom works with iron too.
That house sign sure is lovely. And check out these beautiful pieces of Christmas decor.
All of these projects are great. Thanks for sharing your work with us, Tom.
Up next is a beautiful sapele lamp from viewer Patty Mack. That is one stunning piece.
We're happy you guys are part of our woodworking community here at Wood Songs by Russell. Thanks again for sharing your projects with us.
If you'd like to share your work, check out the link in the description below to head over to our Facebook community. Your project might be featured in a future episode.
And it looks like we're finished. We got our decorative lantern here. It takes very little materials and very little time to build.
This is our first project made out of thermal poplar, roasted poplar. It's been very interesting to deal with. It's very lightweight. It smells like barbecue. You're hungry the whole time you're working with it. It just smells like you could eat it. When you sand it, it kind of looks like cocoa powder. The sawdust is so fine and it like sticks to everything. So very, very important, especially when you're working with this, to make sure you give it a really good wipe down. The dust is very tacky. And as you can see, it finishes, this is Watco Danish oil in a natural finish, and it finishes very dark, almost like a chocolate bar. Are you hungry yet?
If you're a woodworker and you're looking to make a little extra money on the side, this is something that is great to do that with. You can do all kinds of different styles and woods. You don't have to use roasted poplar. You can use any wood you want, really.
Or you could just decorate it and set it around the house.
Yeah. Now, roasted poplar does look quite a bit like walnut. If you get really close, you can tell by the grain that it's not walnut. And if you pick it up, you'll know right away by the weight. It's definitely at least 3 times lighter than walnut.
We hope you've enjoyed today's video. If so, if you don't care, head on down, right down there. Click subscribe and ring the bell. Never miss an episode of Wood Songs by Russell. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. Look around, you're sure to find us. And we also have a website, woodsongsbyrussell.com. Thanks again for joining us today. Happy woodworking!